Our next speaker, our last speaker before lunch, actually has some personal history with this part of the world. I wasn't aware of that. 1970s, I believe. And Dr. Brighthope can speak to that if he wants to. But certainly Dr. Brighthope was one of the bright sparks in Australia, even from the very earliest days of COVID, and has so much truth to tell us, to dispel some of these lies that we lived in for the last few years. And after lunch, we're going to get a little bit heavy, but trust me, we're going to finish with some solutions, and we're going to finish with a lot of hope, because ultimately that's what the gospel is, that's what God is He gives us hope. But you know, as Christians, I think we are the ones who are equipped to face the darkness head on. We are the ones who can stare into the reality of sin and a fallen world head on, because we're the ones that actually know, one, how the story ends, and also what the truth is. We have the Spirit of truth. And so, Dr. Brighthope, I invite you up to help us look into the darkness and the lies that defined the COVID era. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Ian Brighthope. 30 minutes.
Thank you very much, Topher, and thank you for inviting me here to speak today. It's a great honour, and I feel extremely humbled speaking after the great speakers had this morning, including Malcolm Roberts and Senator Babette. I feel extremely honoured. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for a number of people in the audience. Yesterday, a gentleman came up to me and said, "I'm Paul. I looked after you when you had your heart attack 2 years ago this month in Mount Beauty. I had a heart attack from exosomes. I had a heart attack because I was too close to too many people breathing out toxic substances from the vaccines." So I thank Paul because he put the ECG machine on, gave me some intravenous morphine, made me feel pretty good. By the time I got into the ambulance, I asked them, "Have you given me the snake poison yet? That's to thin the blood." And they said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, shoot up a bit more morph, please." And by the time I got into the helicopter from Wangaratta to the Bendigo Base Hospital, I was giving instructions to the pilot because he was going in the wrong direction. That's what good old morphine does to you. I got home. 5 days later, I got COVID. So heart attack, bang, then 10% of my heart's gone. I get COVID. I was sick for a day, felt tired, aches and pains. Why did I get over COVID so quickly at my ripe old age? I got over COVID because I'd been taking C, D and zinc, vitamin C, vitamin D and zinc. And I had a little bit of ivermectin on the side. Everybody should have ivermectin in their cupboard, hydroxychloroquine in their cupboard, and taking their C, D and zinc every day. Now, I did come here December 74 to work in the base hospital in Albury, the old hospital. So it's 50 years ago this December that I came to Albury and do work as a doctor. And I thoroughly enjoyed my stay in Albury, I really did. I learnt a lot about anaesthetics, I did surgery, and I did intensive care. And when we do something in medicine and we do it well, we do it extremely well, up until COVID. With respect to acute interventive medicine, yes, we're the best in the world. When it comes to looking after degenerative diseases, we're not very good at all. And when it comes to looking after and preventing infectious disease, we failed dismally. We failed dismally because we ignore the literature with regard to the science behind the immune system. Now, a long time ago, during the AIDS epidemic, I was approached by AIDS patients to help them. And I didn't know very much at the time about AIDS and HIV, but I did know that these patients were being poisoned by a drug called AZT. It was clear to me that it was depressing their immune system, and this is why they were getting opportunistic infections and dying from them. And I'd been using high doses of intravenous vitamin C for treating people with acute viral illnesses for quite a number of years, and discovered that the use of high doses of intravenous vitamin C could wipe out a flu within a couple of hours. It could give relief to somebody who's suffering from herpes zoster, shingles, within a couple of hours. And I can guarantee it works, because I got shingles when I was under stress, and I had to have a dose of my own medicine. I tell you, 3 dermatomes of shingles is very painful. My wife said, "You're going down to your clinic and you're going to have a bit of your own medicine." So 30 grams of intravenous vitamin C, and I was feeling much better within a couple of hours. Next day, another dose. The day after that, they'd all dried up and gone. And no post-hepatic neuralgia, no pain from the shingles, which is unbelievable. When you see something like this work, it works extremely well. Well, one of my patients from the US, he had full-blown HIV, AIDS. He had Kaposi sarcoma, which is the nasty black tumours on the skin all over his feet, his body, his face. He asked for help, and we gave him help. We gave him high doses of intravenous vitamin C, we gave him nutrients to fix up his immune system, and he had a prognosis of 11 months when he was on the AZT. He actually went on to live for another 9 years. Unbelievable. This is God's medicine. This is natural health care. It's what we need to look at when we are treating patients first up. The other patients, they would discharge themselves from Fairfield Infectious Diseases Hospital, come down to my clinic, have some IV vitamin C, and go back into the hospital and have their pneumonias cured, their other secondary infections and opportunistic infections disappear unbelievably. So after that, I was convinced there's no other way but to use nutritional medicine, nutritional immunology, in patients who are suffering from severe illnesses and disease. First up, of course, somebody comes in with a heart attack or acute asthma, you don't preach to them about their diet and their nutrients. You do the right thing. You give them the proper medicine. Roll on quite a few years with epidemics and outbreaks of influenza. My patients learned if they get the symptoms, they come into the clinic. If the vitamin C orally doesn't hold their flu-like illness, then they have the intravenous and they get better. Then round about 2009, I was given a call from New Zealand. The call came from a friend of mine who was a colleague who had trained with the College of Nutritional and Environmental Medicine and knew about the values of intravenous vitamin C. In New Zealand, in Auckland at the time, there was a gentleman, a dairy farmer, who had swine flu, suffering from swine flu. He'd been on ECMO, which is extracorporeal membrane oxygenation, life support, for 6 weeks. He was in an induced coma, he had lung whiteout, kidney failure, and on top of it all, hairy cell leukemia, special form of leukemia. Probably the reason he got the swine flu so bad. The doctors didn't mention that. The intensive care specialists didn't take any notice of it. They just put him on the ECMO and that was it. Well, the world's experts in intensive care decided that he would not survive. So they said, we're going to turn you off, take you off the ECMO and let him die. The family didn't want that to occur. They contacted me and they said, what can we do? And I said, look, I've had some experience with some fairly sick patients, including those in intensive care, but this doesn't look good at all. I said 30 to 100 grams of vitamin C, which is a very large dose. The hospital only did this under duress of legal threats. The family got the lawyers involved, and the lawyers insisted that the hospital give the patient the medicines that the family had requested. Something a little bit different to today. What happened? He got his intravenous vitamin C, large dose, 30 grams, then the next morning another 30 grams, and within 48 to 72 hours, the whiteout lungs started showing some dark, aerated spots. And with a very short period of time, Alan Smith came off ECMO. Now, there are a couple of 60-minute shows, if you're interested, to have a look at swine flu, intravenous vitamin C, dairy farmer survives. Because there is a lesson there. The lesson to me is, do not let somebody get so sick they go into intensive care. Make sure that they're given intravenous vitamin C in the ward, in the hospital. Or if somebody is sick and going into hospital, before they go into hospital, with a serious illness like the swine flu, the bird flu, or even COVID, make sure that they've got levels of vitamin C, that are going to make sure their white blood cells are going to fight the virus. You can save lives by doing it. Another case came to my attention in Sydney, one of the big Sydney hospitals. This time, it was a young lady, 21 years old. She also had swine flu, and she was also on ECMO. And there was a fight between the doctors and the patient's family about the intravenous vitamin C. Again, I was able to convince the doctors to give the intravenous C, and they did. And this young lady, another 60-minute show on YouTube, she came off the ECMO, and she started breathing, and she was doing well. But she had pancreatitis. Pancreatitis is something you get sometimes from the drugs used in intensive care. So they decided the vitamin C may or may not be helping her, so they took her off it. The pancreatitis took off and she died. The lesson here is never ever stop the vitamin C suddenly, as they did in that case, because the patient will deteriorate. Alan Smith, the same thing happened to him in Auckland. He started to deteriorate. They took the vitamin C off him, but the family forced it back into his system. And he survived, and he's still alive today. Still alive from 2009, 2010. They're just a couple of stories that I relate to you now because the same thing happened during COVID. Let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, we could have been out of COVID in 6 to 8 weeks. My colleagues around the world, 6 to 8 weeks, instead of lining up and getting PCR tests to find out whether or not you've got COVID, if you're asymptomatic or not, was a complete waste of time. At the beginning of the COVID pandemic, I wrote to Prime Minister Scott Morrison as soon as he came out and said, we've got a pandemic. I wrote to him, Greg Hunt, Brendan Murphy. I wrote to the heads of the AMA, the heads of the RACGP, the Royal Australian College of General Practitioners. I wrote to the heads of the unions. I wrote to the heads of business. I think I even wrote to the head of Qantas. God help me. Well, the head of Qantas was a friend of my local politician, Tim Wilson, who was pretty hopeless in terms of getting a message through. But the letters, many, many letters to them were pleading in the end. I said to Greg Hunt in one letter, I beg you, Greg, introduce the CD campaign, a CDs Inc. campaign. We were the first in the world to do it because every year when there's a pandemic, ACNM, the College of Nutritional Medicine, when I was president, we were coming out with a CDs Inc. campaign for the doctors to give to the patients so that you don't get flus and die from them. You might still get a mild flu-like illness, but you're not going to die if you've got these nutrients into your system. But did I have any luck? No. So I employed the services of a public relations company to get the message out into the public. And we got newspaper articles, major newspaper articles, articles in the aged media, even into the media in the UK, about the importance of getting your vitamin D levels up. Because 2/3 of the world are deficient in vitamin D. That's why we get sick. That's why we get infections. Vitamin D is one of the most important nutrients to talk to your immune system and produce antibodies, produce natural helper cells and killer cells and all of the important attributes of the immune system. Vitamin D is the sunlight vitamin. We've heard about light. let there be light, because without light we die, we're dead. There's nothing, no life in this world. And the message from the sun, the message from the photons, whatever you want to call the light, hits our skin, converts the cholesterol into our skin to a precursor of vitamin D, which goes to a healthy liver, which converts it into another form of vitamin D that goes to the kidney, which becomes the active form of vitamin D. So if you've got healthy liver and kidneys, then you're going to produce quite a lot of healthy vitamin D. And that will take the message from the sun into the deepest cells, organs and tissues of your body. That's what it does. The vitamin D takes the message from the sun right into every cell and tissue and organ of your body. That's life. That's the spirit of life. It's given to us. Most of us are low in vitamin D, too low in vitamin D. As I said, 2/3 of the world are deficient. And did we get a message from Anthony Fauci, who I had a fight with over the AZT back in the early days of AIDS? When his patients were dying, our patients here were surviving. Did we get a message from Anthony Fauci about how important vitamin C, D and zinc is, when he actually admitted that he was taking it himself? You know, I used to watch the ABC News. And one night I got teary because there was a little girl who said her gran had died and in a nursing home, and she couldn't go and see her. And I got angry. My research group, or the research group I work with at the National Institute of Integrative Medicine, tried to get into the nursing homes to take blood and do tests for vitamin D levels and measure them and supplement if needed. But it's a thing that was going to protect the elderly from dying, protect them from getting COVID, and keep them alive and let them live a good life. But do you know what? The owners of the nursing home said, yes, you can go in and do it, but the medical people said no. Shame. Well, it's even worse now because the RACGP are discouraging doctors from actually doing tests for vitamin D. Don't do it unless there's an absolute necessity, because it's too expensive. Too expensive? It's getting people's vitamin D levels up to 125 to 150 nanomoles per litre would have allowed us to have complete freedom during COVID, according to the evidence even then. We knew about vitamin D because for a couple of decades work had been done on vitamin D and the immune system. And we knew from 2016, by a paper by Martineau et al. In the British Medical Journal, 25 different studies in a meta-analysis showed that vitamin D was superior to influenza vaccine in reducing the incidence of coronavirus infections and coryza infections and influenza. I was a member of the Liberal Party. I paid for a few Zoom dinners with members of the Liberal Party during 2020 and 2021. We were told a lot of lies. I tried so hard with these members of the Liberal Party to get the message through to Greg Hunt until eventually I had a Zoom meeting with Greg Hunt and a few others. And he said, oh, you've bothered me enough, Ian, over this vitamin D. I'll refer you on so that you can take your message to the experts. I was referred to Professor John Skerritt. So I gave up. I gave up, and I'm really, really thankful to be here today, not only because of the Paul who saved my life, but also to Monica Smith, because Monica's a darling. She interviewed me in the early stages of 2020 And I talked about CT and zinc. And I thought, you know, she's not going to understand what I'm talking about, but she did. She came back for a second interview. And that actually helped tremendously to encourage, because when she walked out of my home, where she did the interviews, she said, "You've got to keep doing this." So I guess that's why I'm here today. And I know I'm jumping from hill to hill like the hills around Albury with different subjects, but tomorrow I'm going to try and consolidate it all and talk to you about how we can treat those and help those who've been vaccine damaged and what we can do in terms of the future, because I have a big idea for a better Australia. I really do. And that is, we need to have a health department that actually makes people healthy. And I see that working fantastically, because we've got some great doctors down here, my friends and colleagues, who've been treated so badly. I mean, I know what it's like to be treated so badly, because when I did my AIDS stuff, I got into trouble with the Victorian Medical Board and they tried to strike me off. But in those days, you were lucky enough to go to the Supreme Court and you could save your licence. And I fought very hard to save my licence. But my friends and colleagues here who have had problems with the medical authorities, it's draconian, they're tyrannical, and they have taken away the freedoms. And freedom is something that we need for our doctors and our medical profession, so that full, informed, enlightened consent to be given to everybody, including the right to refuse treatment and the right to have an alternative. So it's been a very interesting journey, because not only have Paul, the ambulance man who saved my life, and Monica encouraged me here, and of course my friends down here with the welcome that they've given, and Cara Thomas from AMPS. A wonderfully hard-working woman who knows all about the politics and the importance of integrating natural health care, what God gave us, with medicine, and taking us into a situation where everybody can have their health optimised by a fully trained and skilled, experienced doctor in the future. Because when I asked Tony Abbott as Health Minister, I like the name drop, I got on pretty well with Tony. He was fit, he appreciated good diet and nutrition, and his wife was a teacher and appreciated the health attributes. And I said to Tony, we need to have two departments. We need to have a department of hospital medicine and doctors and drugs and disease and so on. But we also need to have a health department. He said, "Oh, Ian, we can't do that." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because we have another set of bureaucrats." And I thought, economically, that doesn't make sense. Because if we've got a healthy population, we'll need fewer bureaucrats, smaller government. So that was my experience with a health minister who I thought might be able to make some changes, but no luck. I'm going to just mention another experience where we have been overruled as doctors. A number of times during COVID, families would call me, "We've got a patient in intensive care, we want to give them some intravenous vitamin C. They're on a ventilator, we want to try the intravenous vitamin C." One night, almost in the middle of the night, I was confronted with a lawyer from the hospital on a Zoom, with a lawyer from the patient's family, as well as a Supreme Court judge. And we had a debate about vitamin C being given to this patient who was dying. It's happened quite a number of times. And this patient was going to die. They'd given him 24 hours. Fortunately, getting around this we had another look in the toolbox that was spoken about before. And this patient had been on a lot of paracetamol, Panadol. So taking a lot of paracetamol can do some damage to your liver. So we said, let's have a look at these liver function tests and see whether there's been any damage. Yes, liver function tests were abnormal. So we said, okay, we can give him some N-acetylcysteine, but we're not going to give him vitamin C. So they gave him N-acetylcysteine, and he survived. N-acetylcysteine has a similar antioxidant effect on the liver to vitamin C. So you look in the toolbox, as Hoodie was talking about before, when you're in a desperate situation. There's plenty of tools in the toolbox. Tomorrow, I'll go through some of those tools that we can use to help those who've been harmed and damaged by the vaccine or the vaccine plus the virus. Because we do have the answers. We don't have all the answers. We need to do more research in this area. Just one last thing, because I was given the 5, before I've been given the 2. We did a study. It was funded by Gina Reinhardt, because Gina saw some of the literature that I was talking about with respect to vitamin C, D and zinc. So she gave the National Institute a few $1 million to do a study. We had to do it in Turkey. We did it in 6 tertiary institutions, hospitals in Turkey. CD, zinc, azithromycin, doxycycline, and some B12, I think that's what it was to determine the progression of COVID in COVID-infected patients in hospital. And without a doubt, we showed if you've got a high level of vitamin D, you'll survive. The only patient who died had a level of less than 10 nanomoles per litre, and we tried to aim for 125, so she was severely deficient. But the other most important thing was that the patients in intensive care who got the intravenous vitamin C were out of intensive care much earlier than those who were not given the high-dose intravenous vitamin C. So as far as I'm concerned, prevention is better than cure. Prevention is better than cure. We need to educate the public. We need to train the public and inform them that vaccines, especially mRNA vaccines, are out. We should be shutting down that industry. Having said that, I hope I can sleep tonight. Thank you very much.